We are now just a few weeks away from the end of the 2025 football season, and with only 4 teams left in Europe's biggest competition, things are starting to heat up. Arsenal have proven they're finally back at the big boys table. PSG have transformed from a collection of stars into an actual unit. Inter Milan are back in the semis for the second time in 3 years. But the biggest story here is Barcelona. Fresh off a dramatic cup triumph over Real Madrid, and now just 2 steps away from completing the treble. A feat usually reserved for the greatest teams in football history, not squads midway through a rebuild with an average age of just 24 years old. What Barcelona are chasing this season is something rare, something no one, not even their most loyal fans, truly expected. One of the greatest redemption arcs football has ever seen. But before we explain how this club made such an impressive comeback, we first have to talk about the collapse. It wasn't that long ago that Barcelona looked untouchable. Years of dominance from Guardiola's legendary tiki-taka, followed by the iconic 2015 treble led by the MSN, this team was the standard for European football. But in sports, dynasties don't just end, they crumble. And for Barça, the first crack came in the summer of 2017 with Neymar's shocking departure to PSG. 222 million euros flooded in, and almost immediately, they were set on fire. Dembele, Coutinho, Griezmann, the front office didn't hesitate to throw around hundreds of millions to try to bring in the talent required to fill in the gap left by the Brazilian. But none of it worked out, and instead, Barcelona became something no one expected: fragile. On the pitch, humiliation stacked up. Roma in 2018, Liverpool the year after, Bayern's 8-2 annihilation in 2020. And off the pitch, it was even worse. Financial mismanagement under Josep Bartomeu had spiraled out of control. And by the time Messi was forced to leave in 2021, not because he wanted to, but because the club couldn't even legally register his contract, Barcelona weren't just broken, they were bankrupt, financially, spiritually, and competitively. When Joan Laporta returned to the presidency that same year, the club faced over 1.35 billion euros in debt, a bloated wage bill, and had a squad that no longer resembled the identity Barcelona had built over decades. There was no easy way out, so Laporta sought out a controversial solution. He activated the now infamous economic levers, selling portions of future TV rights and Barça studios to bring in immediate revenue to help sustain the club's operations. The move sparked criticism, but it allowed Barcelona to avoid collapse, and more importantly, it bought time to begin the real rebuild. In November 2021, Laporta made another gamble. He appointed former club captain and legend Xavi Hernandez as manager, despite his limited coaching experience outside of Qatar. It wasn't just a decision rooted in sentimentality. It was a calculated attempt to reconnect the team to its original principles. Xavi's first mission was simple but critical: stabilize the structure. He reintroduced positional play, emphasized disciplined pressing, and most importantly, he trusted emerging youth rather than relying purely on high-profile signings. The turnaround wasn't immediate. Barcelona still suffered early exits from Europe, endured heavy criticism during stretches of poor form, and looked, at times, like a team caught between eras. But behind the inconsistency, a new spine was starting to form. Pedri, Gavi, Araujo, Balde, young players who had grown inside the Barcelona system, and who represented the club's best chance at building something sustainable. By 2023, the signs of progress were undeniable. Barcelona won the Spanish Super Cup. They reclaimed the league title for the first time in 4 years, built on the foundation of the best defense in Europe. But despite the relative success, inside the club, there were still doubts about the future. Because while Xavi had stabilized the team, the ceiling was becoming harder to ignore. His tactics were questioned. The team's performances in Europe were still disappointing. And then came the tipping point. In a press conference, Xavi openly admitted what many already realized: that Barcelona, under their financial restrictions, couldn't realistically compete with the top teams in Europe. It was an honest answer, but not one Laporta or the fans wanted to hear. And for a president who'd never been fully convinced by Xavi as a long-term solution, it became the final straw. And so it was decided. Barcelona needed a new leader, someone who could take them to the next level. And Laporta already had a name in mind: Hansi Flick, an experienced coach who had been the mastermind behind Bayern Munich's treble-winning squad in 2020. A team that pressed high, attacked with intensity, and played a brand of football rooted in discipline, movement, and ruthless execution. He had been on Laporta's radar for years, but when Flick finally became available after being sacked by Germany in late 2023, the timing was finally right. 11 months into the German coach's tenure at the club, Barcelona finally looked like a team with a clear tactical blueprint again. It's not a return to pure tiki-taka, it's something more modern and far more aggressive. They still dominate the ball, averaging 69% possession in La Liga, but they use it with far more vertical intent.
Instead of endlessly recycling play, Flick emphasizes quick, line-breaking passes to destabilize defensive blocks. Players like Pedri and De Jong are tasked with finding gaps early, accelerating moves rather than delaying them. It's a subtle but crucial shift that allows Barcelona to reach the final third with fewer passes, playing faster, more decisive football than they have in years. The results are obvious. They lead La Liga in key passes, passes into the final third, and through balls. And off the ball, the transformation has been just as stark. Barcelona press higher, harder, and smarter than ever, allowing the fewest passes per defensive action of any team in La Liga, a testament to how effective they are at applying pressure during opponents' teams' build-up. Flick has also trained his defensive line to master the offside trap, leading all of Europe in offsides forced, while also empowering his fullbacks to step aggressively into midfield when Barcelona lose possession. That aggressive front foot defending has made them one of the best transition teams in Europe, winning the ball back high and immediately punishing disorganized opponents. Offensively, Flick has also found a way to maximize every piece at his disposal. Veterans like Robert Lewandowski have thrived, benefiting from an endless stream of chances created by Rafinha and Lamine Yamal. At 36, the Polish striker remains lethal, ranking among La Liga's leaders in shots on target and first-time finishes. Rafinha, on the other hand, has reinvented himself, not just as a winger, but as a creative leader, topping the team in key passes and final third entries to the point of being in Ballon d'Or conversations. But it's the young talents that have truly lit up this new era. At just 17, Lamine Yamal has already become one of the most electrifying players in Europe. His ability to stretch defenses, beat players one-on-one, and deliver decisive passes under pressure has given Barcelona an entirely new dimension. And meanwhile, Pau Cubarsí, Marc Casado, Fermín López, and Héctor Fort have all carved out major roles, blending La Masia fundamentals with Flick's more vertical, aggressive philosophy. This balance between veterans and emerging stars, between control and chaos, has turned Barcelona into a true contender again. They don't just play beautiful football, they play to destroy you, quickly, efficiently, and relentlessly. And that's exactly why, heading into the final stretch of the season, Barcelona aren't just dreaming of a treble. They're building towards it, one ruthless performance at a time. Last Saturday, Barcelona did more than win a trophy. Against Real Madrid in a hostile Copa del Rey final, Flick's team went blow for blow with one of the most explosive attacks in Europe and came out on top. They led early through Pedri, then fell behind after goals from Mbappé and Tchouaméni, but they fought back through Ferran Torres. And with extra time winding down, Jules Koundé stepped up to smash home the winner from 22 yards. A 3-2 victory, a third Clásico win of the season, and a title secured in the most high-pressure setting imaginable. But the significance went far beyond the scoreboard, because this was very different from those Barça teams that collapsed. It was a Barça team capable of responding even when the odds are stacked against them. Just 3 days later, they were tested again. In the Champions League semi-final first leg against Inter, Barcelona went down 2-0 inside 21 minutes. But they didn't fold. Yamal pulled one back with a brilliant solo effort. Torres made it 2-2. And even after Inter struck again to stun Flick's team for the third time on the night, Barca replied with a thunderbolt from Rafinha to level the game 3-3. It wasn't the score they were looking for, but they're still very much alive. Now, with 5 La Liga games left and a Champions League final within reach, the margins are razor thin. One mistake, one lapse of concentration, and the treble dream could collapse. And yet, for the first time in years, Barcelona actually feel like a team built to finish the job.